Fantasy is a genre in which books tend to get better over the course of the series. But this series flipped the status quo and the books got less enjoyable over time. It really went a little bit downhill. This book is kind of like a book form of the Supernatural TV show. This book is multi-POV, hopping between perspectives as fast as a squirrel hops between nuts. Honestly, all this book needed was laser swords. Hello everybody, I am Rue and welcome to my cozy corner of booktube, Rue with the Books. The last time that I hit YouTube up with a talking books video was April the 17th, so we have a little bit more than a month's worth of reading to catch up on. We have a pretty epic variety of books today with big books, short stories, books in series, standalones, books across different genres, and genre-bending books. I hope that you will stick around for an absolutely massive, but hopefully pretty fun reading wrap-up. In this video, I will be talking about 10 whole books and also some short stories, being made up of the 7 books that I recently read, as well as a few short stories in that regard. The 1 book that I am currently reading, as well as the 3 books on my TBR pile that I'm very excited to talk about as well. Be sure to press the like button to support my content in the algorithm. And if you like books, booktube and booktube content, be sure to press the subscribe button down below as well, so that you have my weekly uploads in your subscription feed. I want to quickly apologize for the lighting in this video. We are currently in the middle of a heat wave of 30+ degrees Celsius weather, so I have the curtains nice and shut in an attempt to keep as cool as possible. Anyway, grab a bevy, I have a nice coffee, and let's talk about some books.
What have I read?
The first book that I have finished since the last Talking Books episode is Faithbreaker by Hannah Kana, which is the final book in the Fallen Gods trilogy. Since it's the end of the trilogy, I'm going to avoid spoilers and try to keep it nice and simple. Just talk about kind of the differences in the books, what I liked, maybe what I didn't like, so I can help you form an opinion on whether this might be up your alley. I have some pretty mixed feelings about this book and the trilogy overall as well. The first book is one heck of an adventure. We meet these brilliant characters. We explore how their paths intertwine because they're all very separate at the start. We have a really cool god-based magic system. We see how gritty and how dark the world can be. It has a pretty solid plot, and I enjoyed it a hell of a lot, actually, and I rated it 5 whole stars. The second book splits our party up, who work just so well together on so many levels. While this was a shame, them being in different locations kind of unveiled the jigsaw, and it put all of the different pieces into place. There were some pretty exciting scenes. The characters continue to have their own little cool moments, and I took a really long break in between books 1 and 2, about 2 years. So I was actually reminded about how dark this series was, because I totally forgot that. And I don't mind a bit of darkness. It can be quite interesting, a little bit tense, a little bit spooky. Anyway, I did enjoy the ending for book number 2, but overall I just wasn't really as wowed with this book as I was for the first. I ended up rating the second book 3.5 stars out of 5. Now, the final book. I'm not going to lie. I did get a little bit bored as I was reading it. Hannah Kana kind of steered the plot in a direction that I didn't really enjoy. It was like a little bit of a party of everybody teaming up to defeat an army backed by this one specific kind of greedy, over-the-top, somewhat evil gods. I didn't get as much of that fun adventure vibe that I got in the first 2 books. And one of my favorite characters, Skedi, the god of white lies, didn't really get as many moments to shine in this book as he did the first 2. And he was one of my favorite characters, so I found this quite a bit of a shame. because he is the most unique character, and he's quite a unique character for the fantasy genre in general as well. Because while he is a god, he's quite weak. He's not powerful. He's got a very niche ability, and the way that it is used and it works is very, very interesting. So kind of the reduction in his presence and his awesome moments did make me feel a little bit sad. There were also a few new characters introduced, and I did enjoy them. They were introduced in the latter half of the series, but I feel that by the end of the series, the series neither excelled in plot or character work. It just did both kind of okay. So it's not really going to appeal very much, in my opinion, to like really plot-heavy readers or character-focused readers. But if this series does sound interesting to you, be sure to kind of maybe do a bit of research, look up Goodreads reviews, what people think. Maybe they'll, steer you in another direction and excite you to pick up the series. I just found that I didn't really enjoy the last book very much. The final book in this trilogy was the worst of the lot, and I rated it 3 stars out of 5. It wasn't terrible, but neither was it great, unfortunately. Now, the next book that I read was John Dies at the End by Jason Pargin / David Wong, which is his pen name for this book. And it kind of makes sense because it's written as a fake autobiography, and the main character changes his name to Wong because apparently David Wong is one of the most common names in the world and he doesn't want his identity to be leaked. This book is part of a pretty long series, and while I've heard absolutely phenomenal things about the first book, in fact I'd say it's quite a cult classic, I haven't heard the best things about the latter books, so I'm going to treat this book as a bit of a standalone and probably not pick up the latter books, which, well, is fine with me. Anyway, what is John Dies at the End about? Well, it's kind of very, very weird to explain, so bear with me a little bit. John Dies at the End is a cosmic and Lovecraftian horror novel written in an undisclosed location about 2 dudes that are kind of like paranormal investigators. They didn't start off that way though. They start off as pretty normal people, but through both voluntary and freak occurrence, they end up taking a drug called soy sauce, which kind of overlaps the normal world with a parallel dimension with weird, freaky monsters. The effects of soy sauce never run out. It kind of has like an unlimited half-life, but taking it again brings on the strongest of its effects. Soy sauce allows the characters to see weird monsters and handle them. It also kind of like maxes out their intelligence stats, where they can read into people with like Sherlock Holmes levels of deduction. It messes with perception of time. It, well, does a lot and a whole lot more. Soy sauce as a thing in this book is completely mind-bending, and its effects make the book a whole load of fun to read. Things start getting very, very weird when an interdimensional entity / god called Korok starts putting plans into motion to conquer Earth. It's up to our 2 kind of hopeless protagonists to stop Korok, but can they pull it off? Now that I've gotten the plot out of the way, I want to talk about what the book excels at and what its weak points are. First of all, the plot in this book isn't super prevalent. It's definitely there, but it takes time to develop. It's a little bit of a slow burn because it's kind of a mystery that gets unveiled as you read the book. And of course, with a mystery, you don't just throw all the pieces at the person at the start. You kind of build things up and unveil things and keep you at the edge of your seat and intrigued and wanting to read more. I think with how bizarre this book is, it doesn't make it a massive issue because you just have so much fun reading this book that you can kind of forget about the plot and just really focus on these different character interactions and all the weird stuff, the twists and turns that this book can take. What makes this book so fun? Well, it's super gory, it's ridiculous, it's cheesy, it's got some stupid over-the-top action. and it's all just super, super vivid and visceral and easy to kind of picture in your mind's eye. The book takes weird turns and tangents all of the time, but it really, all of these things add so much to its charm. This book is kind of like a book form of the Supernatural TV show. It feels kind of episodical because you don't really understand what the point of anything that happens is, but everything kind of ties together at the end and it all just works very cohesively. The character interaction between our two central protagonists, David and John, are great. They are kind of like two unlikely friends with very, very different personalities, but their conversations and interactions are absolutely fantastic and very fun. David is, for the most part, quite a reliable person, while John really, really isn't. They have to cover each other's backs and weaknesses at various points throughout the story to make it through to the other side. And that's quite a tough ask when all of this weird, freaky, intense, dangerous stuff just kind of presents themselves in front of them. With the work that David and John find themselves in, it's absolutely fraught with danger. These monsters that they see while other people don't are very, very real. This book is so much fun, genuinely. If you're in the mood for a weird, cheesy, gory, over-the-top horror, this book has to be added to your TBR. But I'll tell you about something that's not so great about this book as a bit of a warning, because if that kind of thing will put you off, then very much do not add it to your TBR pile. Anyway, what is this negative thing that I've just alluded to? Well, I mainly have one. There are a lot, and I mean a lot, of slurs used in this book. The R slur is used probably about 20 times over the course of this book. It's very, very edgy and quite dated by this point. There are also quite a lot of uses of the N word cropping up over the course of the book. It maybe doesn't bother some people, but I'm not a massive fan personally. The R word adds a lot of edge when the book already excels in many different aspects that it really didn't need the extra edge. And well, using the N word is not cool. Hashtag say no to racism. These kinds of words were used a lot more than they are today in 2007 when the book is published. So if you kind of view it from a historical lens and kind of look at the way society maybe was at that time, you can kind of understand. But I just don't think it really added much to it, because it's not like a piece of historical work meant to be kind of paint a picture of how society was at the time. It's a fun, cheesy, Lovecraftian horror book, and I just think those things weren't really necessary and they didn't add anything for me either. Anyway, negatives and ranting aside, I really, really enjoyed this book overall. The combination of Lovecraftian cosmic horror with its mind-bending elements and cheesy vibes, all of the over-the-top gore that's present, the very, very vivid descriptions of said gore, the unpredictability of where things would go next, and just how fun this book is to read makes it a very, very solid 4 stars out of 5. I did have a lot of eye roll moments though with the frequency of the slur usage, and without that kind of element, I think it definitely could have been 5 stars because I just enjoyed this book so very much. While I was waiting for the 2 absolutely massive behemoth books of May to drop, I wanted to read some short stuff to make up time so I don't have to pause in the middle of some massive 800-page book that I was in the middle of reading to pick up said books. So at a great moment in time, I ended up bringing back a physical copy of The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. And so that is the next book I'm going to talk about and the next book that I read. Published in 1983, this book has certainly stood the test of time and is still very popular today. It's a very gothic haunted house story following this guy called Arthur Kipps, who, upon the death of Mrs. Alice Drablow, must travel to Eel Marsh House, which is situated at the edge of a causeway, to find various documents for his soliciting company, to kind of tie up all the loose ends and to keep things moving, get things going, get the ball rolling for the future. This book does suspense very, very well, and it's also very accessible. As Arthur makes his way to the town in which Eelmarsh House is situated, he asks the residents of the town about this property, and all of the local residents, they become very, very uncomfortable about his questions, and they certainly bring him no answers. It's kind of like a bit of a local legend, and this aspect, this kind of unwillingness of people to talk about this house, really adds some intriguing mystery elements to the book. Arthur attends Alice Drablow's funeral and he witnesses the woman in black herself. Having no idea what it means and that it's a ghost or evil spirit, he doesn't think too much of it until he tells somebody what he saw, and he gets some very, very horrible looks. Arthur, despite everything and all of the warnings that he was given by the residents of the town, travels to Eelmarsh House to perform his investigations, to gather various documents, and well, a lot of spooky stuff happens. I'll leave it there for the plot. I enjoyed the setting of this book, Eelmarsh House being at the edge of a causeway, separated from essentially the mainland by sea for most of the day due to the tides. Trapping Arthur for hours at a time is a really, really cool touch and very clever, because for a large portion of the day there is no escape. Arthur has to confront all of these scary, spooky things that go on at this house and really live with the fear that he experiences. I think Arthur is a very cool character because he defies horror book tropes at times, being the sheer stupidity of a horror protagonist experience, and he is willing to take a step back at times, and very much big respect for that. The mystery elements were interesting, as I mentioned previously, and it kept me intrigued, wanting to learn more about the house and its previous residents, who lived there, why it's haunted. I reckon it was the most enjoyable aspect of the book for me. There are a few interesting characters, but due to how short this book is, it's only about 150 pages. They aren't utilized that much, they aren't explored enough. But I guess that's all right, because it's not necessarily the focus of this book. The focus is this house, this woman, the mystery, Arthur Kipps's experience. But yeah, that's just the nature of short books. So it's not really a criticism, it's just a warning that there's only really one prevalent character, maybe a second one, if you're being pedantic. The ending of this book was absolutely brilliant. It's super memorable, and I think it worked absolutely perfectly. There's a little bit of a push and pull thing going on when you think that one thing will happen. Something completely different does. It's chaotic, it's tense, and it just plays with your heartstrings. I did enjoy this book, but I didn't love it. There are a lot of great things, but without really throwing myself into it and studying it kind of with a more literary lens, there are probably a lot of underlying things that I missed that make people love it. Anyway, I wanted a short horror classic, and I got a short horror classic. I can't complain. I had a pretty good time reading it. I just didn't love it, or kind of see why people might be head over heels for this book. I rated it 3 stars out of 5, smack bang in the middle, so pretty average. I think I don't love a lot of these very popular horror books as much as a lot of people do, because they either aren't scary enough or they aren't whimsy enough. I like when things get weird, when things get bizarre, and this book is kind of pretty normal for a haunted house book. I think another thing that I really, really love in a horror book is to really kind of delve deep into the psychology of the characters and have some brilliant character moments, conversations, really start understanding these people. And this book didn't necessarily have that, but once again, it's short, so it's not really a big thing. I'm just kind of explaining what really makes a horror book for me. The next book that I read it because I wanted another short book to read before my massive releases, which I'll get to soon enough. And this book kind of landed for me at the perfect time to do so. That is Restarting by Phil Got Books. I'm not going to do a super in-depth kind of analysis and review about this one because I already have a full video review on my channel about this book. I will leave a card pointing to it somewhere, if you'd like to go and watch it. This book does fit a weird niche, though, that I haven't gotten to before, and that is a YouTuber book. This book follows Joe Schmo, who is visited by a weird blob called Charles and told that he has one singular week to overcome his great life's obstacle. Otherwise, he will be kaput. The twist is that neither Joe nor Charles know what it is, and that Joe essentially has 5 restarts that he can use to reset his day to a certain moment in time and go about things in a different way, see maybe where an interaction would lead, or just start the day from scratch because something went wrong. There's a lot of kind of different avenues that these restarts can be used in, and that's kind of part of the fun, is to see where will he use them. Is it for himself? Is it for other people? Is he selfish or selfless? So yeah, that was really cool. I like the use of limits in this book, with 1 week to overcome the obstacle and 5 restarts to make it work. Joe as a character is interesting. It's a good meme that his name is Joe Schmo and he's a completely average person. He has a lot of inner conflict about wanting to do great things, to be a great person, to overcome the devastating averageness that he has experienced for all of his life. There are some pretty good other characters in this book. The characters maybe do feel a little bit samey, but it's not a massive deal for me because this book is short and their characterization lends itself to the fun, positive, outgoing feel that this book has. This book is multi-POV, hopping between perspectives as fast as a squirrel hops between nuts. There are a lot of sports references in this book that went a little bit over my head, but if you are into that sort of thing, this book may score some bonus points, haha, but I enjoyed how fun this book is, how easy it is to fly through chapters. The comedy, while it doesn't completely resonate with me, I did enjoy, and the book made me laugh quite a few times. I'd say the humor in this book hits for me more than it doesn't. The ending was weird and wonderful. I enjoyed that too. Overall, I rated Restarting by Phil Got Books 4 stars out of 5. I had a measly 2 or 3 days to go until my big anticipated releases finally dropped, so I decided to pick up some short stories from Amazon's various short story collections by various authors. I will give Amazon some credit that they have managed to pull some pretty big name authors to write these short stories for them. Anyway, as these stories are short, this is going to be a bit of a quickfire round. The Pram by Joe Hill. A story about a guy who is mourning the loss of his miscarried child. His wife doesn't want to try again due to the trauma she's experienced, so his hopes of ever being a father disappear alongside this miscarriage. He copes with this trauma by pushing along a haunted, nasty, moldy pram through a forest that was given to him to basically bring groceries back to the house, and it becomes a form of release for him. We get an interesting exploration of his psychology, and it has some interesting cult elements that lead to an interesting twist at the end. 4 stars out of 5. Randomized by Andy Weir. Quantum computers are now in. A casino decides to upgrade to these crazy machines to make their number generation truly random rather than pseudo-random. Now, a couple decide to attempt a heist on this casino to make a lot of money when it's seemingly an impossible task. Will it succeed or will it fail? That's the question. It's a pretty fun premise for a short story, and I would love to see a fleshed out version of this book. 3 stars out of 5. Emergency Skin by N.K. Jemisin. It's kind of like The Humans by Matt Haig, but taken in a very, very strange direction, and it focuses a lot more on the sci-fi elements. The ultra-wealthy of Earth have moved to another planet far, far away because they sense that an apocalypse is imminent. However, Earth's population bounced back, and without all of these ultra-rich billionaires and elites, Earth actually becomes a utopia now that, this drain on society is gone. And now all of these these billionaires, these elites that have moved to another planet, they kind of start evolving very, very weirdly. And now this alien species of humans that have a strangely evolved thing going on, are reliant on Earth's humans for emergency skins, which is the name of the book, and the protagonist is sent via spaceship to collect them. We experience the normalcy of Earth with the despicable second voice of the alien humans ordering him about and shouting and calling him names and stuff. It's kind of funny, actually. I think what M.K. Jemisin has done with a short story is very, very fun, and it's also incredibly clever, and I rated this one 4 stars out of 5. After binging some short stories, the wait was finally over. The Last Contract of Isako by Fonda finally came out, and I picked it up immediately. Once again, I have a full video review out on the channel, so I will leave a card and do a briefer summary of my thoughts in this Talking Books episode. The Last Contract of Isako is kind of like a cyberpunk tech thriller with a very, very engaging mystery. It follows Isako, who wants to retire. She basically has one last mission she must complete in order to be able to do so. She needs to dig up dirt on the CEO of a rival company, and in the process of doing so, she finds information that changes practically everything. The Last Contract of Isako is kind of like a cyberpunk tech thriller with a very, very engaging mystery. It follows Isako, who wants to retire. She basically has one last mission she must complete in order to be able to do so. She needs to dig up dirt on the CEO of a rival company, and in the process of doing so, she finds information that changes practically everything. This book is very plot heavy, so if you're a plot-focused reader, then I have good news for you. I feel like the plot moves at a very good pace, and the chapters are a pretty good length too, so I stayed very, very engaged over my journey of reading this book. The mystery that surrounds this book is very, very interesting, although Fonda couldn't figure out a way of having Isako kind of discover everything, so she ended up doing a bit of an exposition piece for 30% of the book to make it work, and I found that a little bit disappointing because I would have kind of preferred for Isako to get to all of the answers herself. Fonda is an absolute master of pacing her action. She finds the perfect pockets in the books to throw in a bit of action here and a bit of action there to make things a little bit more exciting. One issue I do tend to have is that if there is too much action in a book, it can get a bit dull, a bit repetitive. But Fonda in my experience, has never had that issue. Isako has a bit of a kind of samurai sword thing in this book called a trigger sheath, and one who can draw it fastest tends to win a battle. However, there are occasionally also some extended combats which are pretty epic as well. I enjoyed the combat in this book a lot. There's variety and even some alternative weapons, although I think it could have been a little bit more creative as well. One of this book's biggest strengths for me is its world building. One of the main ways that it builds this world is through the use of science fiction. You understand the stage at which the world is at technologically with what people can and can't do. One of the big missions of a faction in this book is to terraform the planet and make it habitable because this world is very, very cold. And they do so by essentially utilizing global warming and pumping emissions into the air to kind of warm up the atmosphere and make it so more and more of this planet can be habited by the people living on it. It's within the realm of understanding, but it also seems like a sci-fi concept because, well, it's terraforming, right? We don't do this on Earth, not purposefully at least. There are also these second bodies that people can inhabit when, their natural body, the body they were born with, starts breaking down and they start losing mental faculties. And these are called jar brains. And there's a very cool use for them, and the kind of elites of this world, they have to be jar brains living in second bodies to kind of make the cut for this big council of people ruling this planet and making all of the big decisions. That is considerably past what we can do here on Earth, and it's a very interesting concept. So there's a lot of relatable things because there's cars, gas emissions. We understand that kind of thing. We have them on Earth. But it also takes things an extra step and kind of has you really immersed in all of this science fiction going on. So yeah, one of its biggest strengths in this book is its world building, and it's mainly accomplished through the use of science fiction. There's a really interesting twist towards the end of the book which changed so much of what was happening. I really enjoyed it, and the ending itself was pretty incredible too. So, I really enjoyed the plot focus of this book, even if I am more of a character-focused reader, with its heavy emphasis on world building. I could picture lots of the locations that the characters were in. I got a solid grasp of what can and can't be done technologically. The action was good when used, and Fonda found the perfect pockets to add some in. This book is very accessible with pretty simple prose. You can, get yourself into the mood of reading this book within a chapter or two. And in fact, I'd say chapter 1 was an absolute banger. In fact, the first 3 chapters were absolute bangers. They really set the scene for the whole book and made you curious and wanting to read more. The mystery elements are interesting and they help to keep you gripped and wanting to read the next page. Overall, I rated this book 4 stars out of 5. The only thing that let it down was that kind of jarring POV change at about 60% into the book. I've talked on this channel on numerous occasions that one of my reading goals this year was to catch up to the Dungeon Crawler Carl series before this exact book came out. Well, I managed to get that done with a couple of months to spare, and I picked up this book as soon as it came out. I managed to finish reading The Last Contract of Isako just in time to start with this one as soon as it came out. I also uploaded a full video review for this new Dungeon Crawler Carl book on my channel, so I will once again leave a card on screen for you to click if you would like to go and watch it. One thing I love about the Dungeon Crawler Carl series is how Matt Dinniman constantly changes up the format of his books to keep stuff fun, interesting, and super engaging. Over the previous books, we have had multiple storylines play out and build up, the additions of new mechanics, new quest lines, the rise of the NPCs, a card game floor, and Matt Dinniman doesn't fail to impress again by doing something completely different. In A Parade of Horribles, Matt Dinniman introduces a Need for Speed or Forza-style racing focus. This is a dual floor book, and the floor we start with, floor 10, is the one in which our characters do the racing. There are 7 races, or heats as they are called, and so long as you don't come last, you live. It's very simple. The higher that you rank on the leaderboard, the better the upgrades that your vehicle gets. Before the races began, the crawlers got to choose a car or a biological mount. I think the idea of biological mount racing is pretty damn funny, especially when they can be upgraded with beyond silly things. The races in this book are pretty fun to read. I feel like Matt Dinniman didn't try to go too hard on making them too crazy or too intricate. That kind of thing is best reserved for the ending of his books, as we probably know by now. He introduces different biomes and environments in all these different races. So each race only takes maybe 20 to 40 minutes to read at my reading speed, which is not that quick. It comes back to the talk of pacing the action, and Matt Dinniman did it absolutely spectacularly in this book. The humor in A Parade of Horribles is really damn funny. There were so many times throughout my reading experience that I was laughing out loud. This inevitable ruin was a lot darker and a lot more serious, so it was nice that we were back to this kind of optimal frequency of the gags. The second floor in this book, floor 11, is where the Parade of Horribles itself happens, and I'm not going to talk too much about it because I don't want to spoil anything, but oh my goodness, do we have one of the most ridiculous, stupid, incredible endings I have ever read in any book, full stop. It's the best ending in a Dungeon Crawler Carl book to date, and that makes me so happy because the endings are what make the Dungeon Crawler Carl books, despite everything else typically being amazing as well. What is really cool about this book is that it finally opens the doors to witnessing the end game of the series. For a long time, it has been a cycle of enter a floor, deal with the obstacles and whatever the AI throws your way, and then move on to the next. But now Carl has a plan. He sees a kind of vulnerability, something that he can abuse to to kind of complete his crazy plan. I'm not going to say anything else there, but yeah, we can see a way forward, and that's very, very epic, and it makes me so excited to read the next one. The ending of this book kind of alluded to the fact there's going to be 2 more books in the series, so there's really not that much to go. There's within about 3-4 years, this series will be complete. With how long these books are, it's actually insane how fast it felt like I read it. Time just absolutely flew by as I was reading those words. Overall, I rated this one a 5 stars out of 5. It was just absolutely perfect.
Currently reading.
One of my big reading goals for 2026 was to start reading The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, and woo! Finally, here I am. As of recording this, I am halfway into reading The Eye of the World. So, what am I thinking so far? The first 10 or so percent was pretty slow, but considering how long the series is, I'm going to have to get used to the slower pacing, but that's all right. Once we managed to kind of get our characters out of the 2 rivers, things really started picking up. I'm really enjoying the variety of the characters in this book. I think Moraine and Lan are so cool and so badass. I'm really looking forward to seeing more of them and kind of what they can do to kind of really experience the full breadth and width of their powers. I think Rand, Perrin, Matt, Egwene, and Nynaeve are cool too. Their personalities definitely feel very different to one another, although I feel like I'm kind of not really getting anything that unique from Perrin, which is a shame. I hope this character gets developed as time goes on. He's just fairly sensible and fairly normal, whereas the others kind of maybe have some quirks to them, like Egwene is very adventurous, Rand seems quite righteous, Matt is very mischievous. It's cool that we see these kids go on a massive, epic adventure without some sort of S-tier mentor. They are certainly with some powerful people, but we don't really know if these people are trustworthy. So these kids have to survive all of this danger and figure things out for themselves as things go on, because they don't have, someone they can ask all of these questions and learn from. They really have to pick up skills and stuff as they go along and just figure things out in a very brutal time for them to be alive. I'm really enjoying the variety of the environments too. As I said, I'm about halfway in, and so far we've had a farming village, we've had a big city, we've had a ruined city, we've had a naval ship, we've had some nature-esque environment with travelers, forests, and rivers. I might be missing a few as well. Robert Jordan describes these scenes beautifully and has them as these kinds of centerpieces for various different events that happen, because while they're exploring and traveling, they meet different people and, they have these battles, they have these escapes, and there's constantly something going on within these beautiful, vivid environments, and it makes this world feel very, very alive and very different, and it just works all so well cohesively. There is already a bit of progression happening with the characters in terms of their abilities, and I'm certainly excited to see them progress more. At the moment, they're all kind of like blank slates for the most part, and they can be molded in so many different directions, and it seems like there's such a different variety of abilities that can happen. Like Nynaeve is a wisdom, so she can read the wind. The Aes Sedai are able to touch the one power. Perrin's got this kind of ability to communicate with wolves and sense their feelings. There's these fake dragons that can kind of dangerously touch the one power. There's so much going on, and obviously I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot more thrown at me. This feels like a very beginner-friendly kind of fancy book to start with, but things are going to build up so much over the course of the series, because I've heard this like some stupid thing like there's over like 350 unique POVs in this series, and so far we've only had about 5. So things will get more confusing, but that's okay. It's quite nice and friendly and okay for the time being, and we'll see how things change as this series goes on. The character dialogue is pretty interesting to read, but the characters can question things a bit too much at times, and some characters are kind of overwhelmingly stubborn in a way that can be a little bit annoying, and I've actually rolled my eyes a couple of times. One additional thing that I'm really kind of happy about and interested in is there's a lot of different factions and groups of people. There's a lot of like settlements and groups of people that have banded together in this very dangerous world, and they all seem very different. Certain factions are kind of at odds, butting heads with one another, and it feels quite natural because in the real world, groups of people don't get along with one another. And I'm kind of excited to see why, because a lot of these things are very heavily steeped in lore, and we just don't have all of the lore available to us yet because it's like a big mystery, this wheel of time and the patterns and all that kind of thing, these kind of like legendary relics and stuff like that. So yeah, very kind of happy about reading about all of these very different groups of people in this massive world. I'm excited to see where the story goes next. Our protagonists are a little bit split up at the moment, and I hope that they manage to group back up together at some point because I enjoy the vibes of them all being together. They're all a little bit sad and on edge and scared at the moment because, you know, they're in very small groups and, you know, their friends could be literally anywhere in the world and they just don't know if they're alive. So yeah, very excited for them to group back together. There are plenty of very interesting side characters in this series so far as well. I'm enjoying the presence of the Gleeman, who's this kind of storyteller, bard, someone who's very essentially good at entertaining. People just love to have them in their town because the Gleeman makes time just pass by so quickly. There's also Elias, this kind of wolf guy, and he might end up being a little bit of a mentor to Perrin, but we'll see where that goes. The Gleeman is very intelligent and has learnt loads of things that he's witnessed, and the stories that he tells. He seems to be a good guy with our character's best interests at heart. Elias could potentially be a much needed mentor to Perrin, but as I said, we'll just kind of figure things up as I go along. But yeah, as I said, I'm very excited to read more and see where it goes. I'm about halfway in, so anything could still happen.
Gotta read this, man.
The first book that I plan to read after I finish The Eye of the World is Lady Joker Volume 1 by Kaoru Takamura. This book is about 5 people who meet on a racetrack every week to make bets on horses. These people are all living very tough lives, kind of not realizing their fullest potential in society, or they're just going through a lot. We follow a poorly socialized genius stuck working as a welder, a demoted detective with a chip on his shoulder, a Korean banker sick of being ostracized for his race, a struggling single dad of a teenage girl with Down syndrome, and an elderly drugstore owner grieving his grandson, who has died suspiciously. With a grudge against society for the way that it functions, these 5 people plan to kidnap the CEO of Japan's largest beer conglomerate and hold them for ransom. This book is based on the unsolved true crime kidnapping case perpetrated by the Monster with 21 Faces, which I think sounds cool. I've not really read any fiction based on a true crime story. This book is supposedly very heavy on its literary value and taught in high school classrooms in Japan. I'm excited to see whether the literary merits of it will simply fly over my head or if I'll pick up on a lot of the underlying themes and narratives and lessons and wordplays and whatever else, and really soak it all in, but we shall see. I think this book sounds really exciting. It's kind of like a heist book, and I certainly do enjoy a heist book, and I wish to read more of them. What really appeals to me about this book is that it sounds like it's going to go really hard on the characters while being supported very well by a pretty interesting plot. I'm definitely more of a character-focused reader, so I want to hear about their struggles, see kind of what the tipping point for them is, that they decide they're going to kind of do this, and how they set up their plan. I'm leaning into the plot a little bit. I want to see how they pull it off and what the repercussions will be. This is a two-part story, so I do wonder where it will go after the ending of this book as well. There's certainly a lot to be excited about with this book, and luckily for me, it's the next book that I am going to read. The next book that I plan to read is Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. I have a little bit of experience with this author as I read Utopia Avenue last year. It was a rogue library pick and it was one of the best books that I read last year. People hardly ever talk about Utopia Avenue. Everyone always raves on about Cloud Atlas and how it's a difficult book, but it's so incredibly rewarding and so incredibly good and it's so gripping. I'm ready and excited to put this to the test and see what the hype is actually about. I'm going to directly read the Goodreads summary of this book because it sounds kind of difficult to explain, and I think that the Goodreads summary probably does it best. I'm sure this book is going to be pretty mind-bending based on what is going on there. A postmodern visionary who is also a master of styles of genres, David Mitchell combines flat-out adventure, a Nabokovian lore of puzzles, a keen eye for character, and a taste for mind-bending philosophical and scientific speculation in the tradition of Umberto Eco, Haruki Murakami, and Philip K. Dick. The result is a brilliantly original fiction as profound as it is playful. Now, in his new novel, David Mitchell explores with daring artistry fundamental questions of reality and identity. Cloud Atlas begins in 1850 with Adam Ewing, an American notary voyaging from the Chatham Isles to his home in California. Along the way, Ewing is befriended by a physician, Dr. Goose, who begins to treat him for a rare species of brain parasite. Abruptly, the action jumps to Belgium in 1931, where Robert Frobisher, a disinherited bisexual composer, contrives his way into the household of an infirm maestro who has a beguiling wife and a nubile daughter. From there, we jump to the West Coast in the 1970s, and a troubled reporter named Louisa Ray, who stumbled upon a web of corporate greed and murder that threatens to claim her life, and onward with a dazzling virtuosity to an inglorious present-day England, to a Korean superstate of the near future where neo-capitalism is run amok, and finally to a post-apocalyptic Iron Age Hawaii in the last days of history. But the story doesn't even end there. The narrative then boomerangs back through centuries in space, returning by the same route in reverse to its starting point. Along the way, Mitchell reveals how his disparate characters connect, how their fates intertwine, and how their souls drift across time like clouds across the sky. As wild as a video game, as mysterious as Zen Koan, Cloud Atlas is an unforgettable tour de force like its comparable author who has transcended its cult classic status to become a worldwide phenomenon. One of my favorite things in books, if it's done well, is seeing how characters on completely different paths end up meeting and how their missions kind of intertwine. Based on that summary and how popular this book is, I'm hoping that it's going to pull it off fantastically. The best way I can compare this kind of thing is it's like you see all of the pieces of an intricate jigsaw being made without knowing how their shapes are going to form and how they're going to fit together. But as you spend time seeing this all happen and you put the pieces together and everything, it finally falls into place. I love that moment of realization when it finally all comes together. Doesn't this book sound interesting? Well, it's the second book I'm going to read after I finish The Eye of the World, and I really look forward to it. Shout out to my friend and fellow booktuber David G for convincing me to read this book. I'm going to stay true to my word and get around to it in 2026. Stay tuned for my thoughts on it in a month or so. The final book in my TBR pile for this video is Stormfronts by Jim Butcher, which is book 1 in the Dresden Files. I worked hard this year to finish up another series so I can make space for this one, and now, finally, I will be able to get around to it. The series follows Harry Dresden, a professional wizard for hire. In Stormfront, the Chicago Police Department brings him in for some help in finding the perpetrator of a double homicide committed with black magic. Now that he's on the case, it's a cat and mouse game between him and the dark magician, the perpetrator of this crime, the criminal that needs to be brought to justice, and Harry needs to bring his A game to be able to track him down and to avoid being on the opposite end of the black magic himself. I'm really excited to read this book because I haven't really read any good urban fantasy yet. It's quite an underexplored subgenre of fantasy for me. I've tried Rivers of London by Ben Aronovich, but I wasn't really a fan of it. So where's the next best starting point for the genre other than the father of urban fantasy itself? I might be a bit misguided on that, but let's hope that I'm not. I've been inspired to pick up this series by Mike's book reviews. He has repeatedly mentioned just how good this series is, and the first few books are fairly short, so it will be a nice series to have kind of on hand to pick up in between other books and series, maybe in between these massive behemoths of Wheel of Time books or so. So, somewhere on the screen you will see a screenshot of my reading goals for 2026. Since last time, I have managed to finish up the God Killer books, and I talked about that earlier in the video. I've started the Wheel of Time, and I've set myself a goal of 2 books this year as a starting point. I was originally thinking 3 every year, but I started reading the series quite far into this year, and they are very, very long books, and there's still plenty more I want to read in terms of other books and my other reading goals. So I think I'm happy to just do 2 this year, and then maybe start with 3 from 2027 onwards, maybe pick those books up a little bit earlier in the year, so it's easier to do 3 a year rather than doing that this year. I've not started Dresden Files yet, but that's now planned into my TBR, and it shouldn't take that long to finally get started with it. I'll definitely be covering the first book in the next Talking Books episode, and so that will be checked off. I'll have started on that. I am quite excited for it. It should be a good bit of silly fun, and hopefully it just doesn't take itself too seriously. I haven't put it into this video because it's already quite long, but hopefully next time I will talk about what I plan to read for Stephen King. I have no idea when I will get around to reading more Discworld currently, but I have plenty of time in the year still to fit in a book or 2. We are approaching the halfway point, and I've made fantastic progress with my reading goals thus far. Hopefully I'll manage both a couple of Stephen King books and a couple of Discworld books this year, but we shall see. My plan to read Cosmere is still a maybe, I'm not sure. I'll see whereabouts in the year I am when I finish up with my other reading goals, but I'm thinking instead of picking up Stormlight, I might go for a standalone if I choose to do so, to still get a little bit of Brando Sando in before the year ends. Either way, it's still a maybe. So, I'm going pretty well on my reading goals this year. I've made some significant progress and I have plenty of time in the year yet. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have made it this far, I hope you don't encounter any black magic today. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more weekly uploads straight into your feed. Additionally, I would also love to hear what was the last book that you read and what you thought of it. I reply to all of my comments in the comment section, so if you'd love to have a chat with me, then let's do so. If you would like to connect with me outside of YouTube, I have some links to my socials in the description below. Anyway, until next time, Root out.